You are listening to the Fly the W670 podcast, episode 85 of season number 3. The 2024 World Series Spectacular starts on Friday. Don't forget to listen, download, review. Most importantly, subscribe to the podcast, follow on all the socials. Fly the W670 on Twitter, Instagram. Of course, we're on Facebook. Email Crawly and I, flythew670gmail.com. All right, Crawly, we've got the Yankees. We've got the Dodgers, two highest payrolls, or at least two of the top three highest payrolls. Let's talk about how these two teams compare to our Cubs.
Yeah, friend of the pod, Jim Callis, wrote an article on MLB.com that looked at how the Yankees and Dodgers were built. I thought it'd be interesting to compare it with the Cubs roster. So from the article, if you take a look right here, it gives you the numbers, relatively speaking, with the Yankees and the Dodgers. Free agents, obviously, you know what free agent is. Trade or a waiver pickup, and you're probably not going to see too many guys on the waiver pickup being in the lineups. They don't really play that big of a role usually. And then they looked at homegrown talent. And so with homegrown talent, Dustin, that's either through the draft or international free agents. And people may not know what that means, but like if you are from the United States, Canada, or Puerto Rico, you have to declare for the draft. If you're from a different country, you become an international free agent. So it's a little bit different, but it's kind of interesting. And so when I look at the Yankees 26-man roster, 4 players were drafted by the Yankees, right? Aaron Judge in 2013, pitcher Clark Schmidt 2017, shortstop Anthony Volpe in 2019, and catcher Austin Wells in 2020. So if you look at the Yankees, Dustin, they got 3 players that are going to be on their roster that they everyday lineup that they're going to be playing with that they drafted. Aaron Judge, not a bad one, huh?
Good pickup. Good pickup. Sometimes you score in the draft, right?
Yep. 2 were international signings, but they're not going to be playing that much. 13 of their players were acquired via trade. The biggest ones, 2016, Gleyber Torres, that was the Aroldis Chapman deal, right? In 2017, they picked up Giancarlo Stanton to the Miami Marlins. The Marlins just give everybody away. They're the worst organization, I swear to God. Luis Gil, another pitcher in 2020 and in 2018. And then in 2024, they got Chaz Chisholm. So those are the guys that you're going to really kind of see a lot of. Obviously, Torres, Stanton, and Chisholm you're going to see in pretty much every game. So most 3 of the 4, 3 of those people are in trade. And 7 were acquired through free agency. Ready for this? Garrett Cole, $324 million, December 2019. Carlos Rodon, remember him? December 22nd, $162 million, and closer Luke Weaver. He's only making $2 million, so a pretty good deal. But the 2 big signings, Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, and obviously they're going to play a big role in this World Series as well, right?
Huge.
Now, when we look at the Dodgers 26-man roster, they have the least homegrown production of any of the 12 playoff teams. And so 5 of their players were drafted, but the only 2 that you're really going to see, they both were from the 2016 draft. Their second baseman, Gavin Lux, and their catcher, Will Smith. So those 2 were draft picks. 2 were international signings. 2017, Andy Pages is a center fielder from Cuba. You're not going to see a lot of him, but he did have a couple home runs in the NLCS. 9 players were acquired via trade. Ready? Mookie Betts from the Boston Red Sox. Kike Hernandez, twice Andrew Friedman got him in trades. But 2024, Dustin, look at this trade. That 3-team trade with the Cardinals and the White Sox, they pick up Tommy Edman, who was injured at the time of the trade, who became the NLCS MVP, and Michael Kopech, who started the final game and has been an important part of their bullpen. I mean, that's a pretty amazing haul right there to get Mookie Betts, Kike Hernandez, Tommy Edman, and Michael Kopech through trades.
They did a great job during the trade deadline.
And so, Dustin, kind of when we talk about these kind of things, if you're going to be a good team, okay, maybe you don't have maybe the Dodgers don't have a lot of players that they drafted in their starting lineup, but they acquired guys through trade that do you get what I'm saying? Is that guys that they drafted, they traded away and got guys like Mookie Betts and Tommy Edmonds and Michael Kopech. So, really, really good pickups there. They had 2 waiver deals. You're not really going to see those guys. but they acquired 8 players through free agency, Dustin. And boy, when you talk about 4 of them, they are definitely expensive. 3 of them especially. How about Shohei Ohtani in 2024? They signed in free agency $700 million, 680 of that's deferred. So $20 million salary on that. Then they
they got very lucky on that.
I still don't know how that's legal. Someone's smart is going to have to explain that to me. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, $325 million. Next up, Dustin, in 2022, they got Freddie Freeman for $162 million. Teoscar Hernandez is making 23.5, and their setup man, Blake Trinan, they got in 2019 for $10 million. But when you look at that Freddie Freeman deal for $162 million, when you think about 2022, that's only a couple of years ago, but that seems like it was a really good deal for the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Now, when we look at the Cubs, I kind of looked at players that were really significant in the 2024 season. And out of drafts, they had 1, 2, 3, 4 players that really, I would say, played a significant part, at least 3. Justin Steele was drafted in 2014. That still blows my mind that long ago, right? He was actually drafted before Ian Happ. Ian Happ was drafted in 2015. Nico Horner, but remember that Ian Happ went to college and Justin Steele came straight out of high school. So there's going to be a difference there, right? Yep. Ian Happ, obviously a little bit more seasoned by the time he was drafted by the Cubs. Nico Horner was a 2018 draft pick, and Porter Hodge, who did a really great job out of the bullpen this year, 2019 draft pick. So 4 players there. International free agent signings, 2. Miguel Amaya and Christopher Morel, who's no longer with the team in 2015, but he was, supposed to be a big part of the team. How about the trade, acquired via trade? Kyle Hendricks in 2012. Do you remember who they traded to get Kyle Hendricks?
I don't know.
That was Ryan Dempster.
Oh, okay.
That was the old Ryan Dempster trade. And so Dempster actually did not want to go. He wanted to go with Ted Lilly. And there was all sorts of kind of craziness. And at the end, they ended up making a deal with the Rangers. And that's how they got Kyle Hendricks. How about PCA in the Javi Baez trade in 2021?
Baez, yeah. Yep.
Michael Bush was traded for Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris this year. Now, there's 2 that are interesting, Dustin, because I didn't know how to categorize these. Isaac Paredes was an international free agent. The Cubs picked him up when he was just a kid, 16, 17. They traded him to Detroit at the same time they traded Jaime Candelario. So both of the third baseman they traded for last year and the third baseman they traded for this year, they traded to get Justin Wilson with Detroit. And then Tyson Miller was another Cubs draft pick that they traded to get, or they picked up off the DFA pile from Seattle. So kind of interesting on that one. Now, free agency. You ready for this? Because I think this to me is really kind of the difference here, Dustin, when you talk about the Cubs versus when you talk about the Yankees and the Dodgers. Seiya Suzuki, $85 million. Jameson Taillon, $68 million. That looked like a good deal this year, right? Drew Smiley, not bad, $19 million. And so all 3 of those, that's 2022 you're looking at. Dansby Swanson, he made $177 million. So that Freddie Freeman deal was 20. So that was in 2023. They signed Dansby, $177 million. So I guess when I just look at that, Freddie Freeman is making $162 million. He signed 1 year later. Who would you rather have?
Pretty easy answer, right?
Right. And Cody Bellinger, $80 million free agent signing. Shota Imanaga, $53 million. So on the pitching side, I think they did a really good job with Shota and Jameson this year. They had great seasons and they didn't cost you, when you talk about the Yankees and signing Garrett Cole to $324 million. I mean, that's a pretty good deal, but you look at some of the guys that they hit on as far as the Dodgers and the Yankees position players, Ohtani and Freeman and Teoscar Hernandez. And when you look at the Yankees, Garrett Cole and Carlos Rodon, I don't see the Cubs. The Cubs' really big signing was Dansby Swanson at $177 million. And to me, he's just a guy that really, he's a great defensive player. But when you're talking that amount of money, I need more out of the offense,
Yes.
Or if that's your highest paid free agent, and we had the same thing with Jason Hayward, where he was
same exact thing.
Now, Dansby's not as bad as Jason Hayward, but again, your highest paid player, what would you say if someone was to ask you, what would you say as far as offensively, where would you rank Dansby Swanson on the Cubs roster?
Fifth.
Right.
Am I being generous? Fifth, I think, is about fair.
I mean, offensively, would you rather have Nico at the plate or Dansby?
Boy. Okay, how about this? I'm going to change the question, sort of. If nobody's on base, I want Nico up. If somebody's on base, I want Dansby up.
Okay.
Nico, I'm not looking this up. I'm just going off of memory. It seems to me that when Nico is up to bat and there's somebody on base, he just drubs the ball to the second baseman every time.
You the old Jason Hayward 4-3?
Mm-hmm. Very similar.
Okay. And so
hey, wait a minute though. No. You got to answer your own question.
I'm just really quick. I'm looking at Nico. Slashes 246, 313, 364 with runners in scoring position. So if he is 246 and we go to Dansby and take a look at the same. So 246 for Nico. Dansby, if we look at runners in scoring position, runners in scoring position for Dansby, 246.
Almost exactly the same. Wow.
Almost exactly the same. So you're not really getting that much more bang for your buck. Cody Bellinger, would you rather have Cody Bellinger up than Dansby?
I think so.
Okay. What about Michael Busch?
Last year, yes.
Seiya Suzuki, I think, would be an easy, right?
Yep.
I'm just
Ian Happ, yes.
Yeah, when you just go through it, man,
that's why I said he's about fifth, right? He's about fifth.
Yeah, I just look at that and I say to myself, hey, it's just interesting to see how these teams are built. And that being said, with the Cubs, they have a lot of young guys in their system, a lot of homegrown talent. They're going to have to trade some of it, but some of it we got to see this year. Obviously, PCA was in a trade, but a young guy right there, Porter Hodge, Luke Little. A lot of these guys came from the Cubs. Daniel Palencia. A lot of these guys came from the Cubs farm system, and hopefully we'll be able to, Jordan Wicks will be able to kind of continue to contribute. Some other Cubs news, Dustin, when you take a look at Nico Horner, we learned this week he underwent right flexor tendon surgery on October 11th. I think, did that come as a shock to you? Were you surprised about that?
Well, I'm not surprised that he might have had something wrong. I guess the question is, why did it take so long to have surgery?
So for people that don't know, the right flexor tendon surgery, flexor tendon, that's going to be in his forearm of his right hand, which is his throwing hand, right? And so the speed at which he was throwing the ball was a little down, nothing terrible. Offensively, he did pretty well, especially towards the end of the season. Okay. So he didn't go on the injured list at any time in 2024, Nico. He played in 151 games. He missed a few games in May with hamstring tightness. He also suffered a hand fracture when he was hit by a pitch in June. And when you look at the stats, June was when he really struggled offensively. And that's when the team really struggled offensively as well. So that's one that I just don't get with the Cubs. And maybe, I wish I had 12 questions to ask Jed Hoyer at CubsCon. You know what I'm saying? Is that why, if he has a fractured hand, why is the guy still, he hit 230 in June, Dustin.
Well, it says that I'll answer the question for Jed because we don't have anybody better. He's the best option. Even a banged up Nico's our best option.
Then that's a real big problem, I guess.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying that's the issue.
Okay. The forearm, though, what we're going to take a look at is we don't know what the timeline is going to be. We kind of have a general idea for pitchers, but not for a position player. So it's going to be a little bit different, right? But you have to think, Dustin, that this throws a wrench in Jed Hoyer's offseason plans.
That's exactly the problem. That's the problem.
Right. There's 2 years remaining on his extension. He's set to make roughly $12 million this year, $12 million next year. But the thinking was the Cubs would trade Nico and put Matt Shaw probably at second to try to get more offense. So now that's the question, is how this remains to be seen. You know what I mean?
TBD, buddy. TBD.
Congratulations goes out to Moises Ballesteros and Brandon Birdsell. They were named the minor league players of the year. There was a press release that the Cubs had. I've had a chance to talk to Moises Ballesteros. He is a great kid, and we have an interview today on this episode with Brendan King from the South Bend Cubs. We had Sam Weirhoff a few weeks ago, and just everybody that has ever seen this kid is just raved about him. And so he wins the Buck O'Neil Cubs Minor League Player of the Year award, obviously named in honor of Buck. But Ballesteros has been the minor league player of the year in back-to-back seasons. He won it in 2023. He's a left-handed hitting catcher, and he hit a combined 289 with 24 doubles, 1 triple, 19 home runs, 70 RBIs, a great on-base percentage, 354, and an 826 OPS in 124 games between Double-A Tennessee and Triple-A Iowa. He led all qualified Cubs minor leaguers in average, second in RBIs, third in slug and OPS, and tied for fourth in home runs. He was also the representative for the futures games for the Cubs. And so he's ranked number 4 as far as Cubs prospects are concerned. When we talk about your offseason plans, the question really is if Cody Bellinger opts out, and I'm hearing more and more that's what it kind of sounds like.
That's what we're seeing, right? That's a lot of the internet buzz, is that he's going to opt out.
Then the question is, do you put Seiya Suzuki in right field and call Moises Ballesteros up? Now, I don't know if he's going to give you as much pop as you would expect, but he is a guy that's going to get doubles. He's going to get on base. It'd be interesting to kind of put him out there. Again, that doesn't really solve a guy that's going to hit 40 home runs, but it is a guy that is going to be one of the better hitters you're going to have on this team.
Well, if he's a 2-time award winner like that, I mean, what else does he have to prove at that level, right?
Right. He only has a little more than half a season at AAA. And the jump between AAA and the majors is a lot. So you're going to see what you saw with PCA and Michael Busch and Miguel Amaya, where you see those struggles. But it seems to me like he usually doesn't go and struggles too long as far as the glove or as far as with the bat. Now with the glove, catching wise, he would probably be better suited as an everyday DH. But if you could have him catch, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 days a season, one or two games a season, that might be, or 1 or 2 games a week, that might be interesting. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Brandon Birdsell, 24, 8-9 with the 391 ERA, 134 strikeouts in 27 games between 27 and Iowa. He led all minor league pitchers in starts, innings pitched, and strikeouts. His walk rate, 5.4%, was the lowest among all Cubs minor league starters. So he had 14 appearances for Tennessee, looked really good. He finished at AAA going 4-5. But he really had 12 straight scoreless innings from August 22nd to 28th, so he improved as he went along. So it'll be interesting to see where I'm sure Birdsell will probably start in AAA this year, but the question would be how much longer will he be there and how long until he's called up? You see the Cubs are doing that. And, for me, Dustin, just a big question is how many of the young guys, you saw them call young guys up but not stay healthy with Jordan Wicks, with Ben Brown, with some of these guys, the more arms you have in AAA, I think it's going to be interesting, and how many of those guys are going to come out of the bullpen. So right. I think all of these things are things that we have to look at for next year. And again, when you look at the composition of how these teams look, the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Dodgers used those young players as trade pieces. The Yankees not as much, but they did as well. So these drafts, these international free agent signings, they make a big deal when they come to comprising your team and when you're trying to get to that next level.
You are listening to episode 85 of season number 3 of the Fly the W670 podcast. The 2024 World Series Spectacular is upon us. Don't forget to listen, download, review, give us a 5-star review. Email us, flythew670@gmail.com. And don't forget you can watch us on the 670 The Score YouTube page. In this segment, Crawly's talking to Jorge Moreno, analyst for the Spanish Cub broadcast, who tells us about how he got into broadcasting, calling games for the team he grew up rooting for, and the first ever road trip for the Spanish broadcast team to LA, and the role that Fernando Valenzuela, who passed away on Tuesday night, had on Jorge's career.
Join me now on the Fly the W podcast. He is one half of the Cubs Spanish broadcast team for the Latino Media Network. Well, let's welcome Jorge Moreno to the Fly the W podcast. How are you, Jorge?
I'm good, Crawly. Excited to join the podcast. I've been on it before with Miguel, but this time, I'm excited to join it on the off season and just get to talking to some Cubs with you.
Yeah, it's always so much fun. You guys, I got to say, how did you, Jorge, get involved? Were you always a Cubs fan? Were you always a baseball or a sports fan? How did you get into this kind of broadcasting work?
Yeah, so I got into soccer at a young age. I was really into soccer. My dad's Ecuadorian, so he's not much into baseball. He used to sit down and watch baseball. On my mom's side, the whole Fernando Valenzuela is always a big thing. It's a big entity, a big connection with baseball. But me, I became a fan in 2003. That magical year in itself. I remember one summer day. It was actually a Saturday, Cubs Yankees at Wrigley, and my neighbors were having a barbecue, and I was just in the backyard shooting the ball. And they invited me over for some food and watched the game. And ever since then, that 2003 just really captured me. Became a fan ever since then.
Oh man, I was at that game. Which one was I at? It was Pryor versus Andy Pettit was the game I was at, and then you had Wood versus Roger Clemens the day before. It was an unbelievable series. So you picked a good year to get into the team, and so you're sitting there, you're a young man, and what kind of got you into the broadcasting gig?
Broadcasting, just in general, I've always been a big fan of radio. For some reason, just radio calls. I remember my dad, he would be working, painting on rooms or doing some maintenance, and he'd always have like a soccer game on radio. And that's always attracted me. And as I've gotten older, just late night radio with the late Les Grobstein, I must say, listening to him throughout the night was something that really captured me. And then just life happened that I got an opportunity to work at a radio station in Spanish in the city of Chicago. And little by little, I got opportunities engineering audio games at Wrigley, at the White Sox. And ever since then, I made it a point to really get to know the equipment, get to know how the outs of a broadcast, and just work my way up within being an audio engineer.
That's amazing. And like you said, just to hear broadcast, especially if people haven't heard Spanish broadcast, whether it's baseball, whether it's soccer, whether it's whatever, it's kind of a different beast. When you think of say like, Vin Scully or someone kind of, some of the old school guys, Jack Buck, those kind of guys, Spanish broadcasting, because I grew up around it too. It's just it's very emotional, like the entire time. It's like, I don't even know how people can kind of like, it's just like, I can't imagine like a 3-hour game with that kind of passion and just kind of just cheering. So it's just something that kind of gets into your bloodstream. And so, like you said, you get to go to Wrigley Field and you get to do audio engineering. And what was it like? I got a picture up here for those on the 670 The Score YouTube channel of you, just a beautiful panoramic picture of you at Wrigley Field. What was it like for you to kind of be able to explore Wrigley just kind of on your own?
Well, first of all, as a fan, I think that was what really connected me as a fan. I would always take the at that time it was the blue line into the red line into the city. And growing up with my neighborhood friends, my dad would be like, so you're going to get off on this stop, transfer over and get off on that one. And just be going to games, standing room only, going from corner to corner, finding spots. And then once you get into the professional side and seeing the press box and seeing unique views that you normally don't get, it's just it's been amazing. And you really that picture that you previously had shown was that it was just, that's like a picture perfect for me. You can't ask for anything better. The sunset, the W flag in the back, it's just, and that's one of those one of those moments that I really do, treasure a lot.
You were talking a little bit about late nights with Les Grobstein, and it's funny that you bring up the Grobber. He was one of my all-time favorites, and the funny thing is I don't think you'll ever find another broadcast like that ever. And it was one of those things where he could just kind of do whatever he wanted. It was late night. And, I would remember I'd go to the Cubs games and I'd kind of hang out in Wrigleyville a little bit afterwards. And then on the way home, put on 670 and the post-game show would already be over and Grobber would get started. You could sit there, and sometimes as a guest, I would call on there. I'd be there for like 20, 25, 30 minutes. Usually you get like 2 minutes, 30, lucky if you get 45 seconds before you get dumped. You could have a huge, like a 30-minute debate with Les. It was one of the most amazing things ever,
It's that definitely. As a fan, I could clearly remember going home that Sunday night against the Mariners when we're down, and there was the John Lester bunt. Like, I remember I went home after had a late dinner and then just listened to Les Grobstein, because that was just a historic comeback, and it was a good way to start the week, or just a good way to unwind and just hear someone go off on a rant. And I really connect with that passion, and that's what I try to bring to our broadcast in today.
Well, let's talk about your broadcast. Do you remember your first broadcast at Wrigley Field?
At Wrigley Field, my first broadcast, unfortunately I do not remember the specific game, specific team. I started off as fill-ins in 2018. I could possibly say it was a Cubs Reds, but I don't quote me on that. And that sucks, because I'm one to really be very specific on things that I do. And with that being said, I do have the ticket to my first ever Cubs game that I went to. It was in May. It was Carlos Zambrano. It was against the Marlins. So, it kind of hurts me that I don't recall my first ever broadcast.
So you're sitting there and you're doing the audio engineering stuff. Who's the one that's kind of taps you on the shoulder and says, "Hey, you're coming in"?
That was my boss. So one of the broadcasters didn't show up, and she's like, he's not going to show up. I need you to go on the air. This is me having no background, broadcasting background, nervous. My hands are always excessively sweat, and I just say yes, and I get lost in the game and start figuring out what my broadcaster's doing. Then I kind of realize, this is like a whole flow, and this is like a routines type of thing. So I kind of try to figure out my routine.
Right. And tell us a little bit about your routine on a game day. How does that usually go?
Yeah. So usually we get an alert at what time the clubhouse opens. So usually for a 1:20 game, the clubhouse opens around 10 o'clock, 10:10. Make sure I'm there around that time. Try to get some interviews for our pregame show. And in between that time, talk to Miguel. We talk about the last night's game, or Elio, my broadcast partners, Miguel Esparza and Elio Benitez. And just from there on, grab the stat sheets, game notes, and I usually like to have take down certain stats that I use and just prepare it and get ready for a ball game.
Yeah, for those that don't know, Elio is the Latino Matt Spiegel. He looks exactly like Matt Spiegel, the Latino version of Matt Spiegel. And so you mentioned your partner Miguel. When did you and Miguel start working together?
It was the 2018 season. It was the year he got involved with Univision. I was already an audio engineer. And I can recall our first time having lunch together, and it was just, we're talking about the Cincinnati Reds, and little did I know I was gonna, grow as a professional and grow as a Cubs fan with Miguel for the upcoming seasons, and just to see him have those historic or have those great home run calls right next to me, it's something really special.
Yeah, and so it's really, and Boog mentions it all the time, is that you can just hit the Spanish button on your remote and you get the Spanish broadcast. And it just seems to me like year by year, the Spanish audience is growing, especially because of the work that you and Elio and Miguel are doing. Do you get a lot of people that come up to you and kind of recognize you and start to talk to you about the broadcasts?
Yeah, and it's surreal. Earlier we had talked about part of my pregame, and one of my rituals, something that I really enjoy to do, is take a lap around Wrigley before the game and really get the feel of how the fans, the atmosphere is like. And in between that walk around, I get to talk to people that say they listen to the broadcast, or just people that see me on a day-to-day basis. And it's really nice to be able to establish that relationship with the Cubs fan, and just for people to come up and tell you that they listen to your broadcast. It's a huge responsibility, and you always try to commit and be as on point that you can, and always have fun with the broadcast.
Now, you talked earlier about interviews, and here's a picture of you interviewing Miguel Assad or Javier Assad. When you get to do those interviews, especially for the Latino players, I mean, it's really hard. Like, if you don't know any English and a lot of the beat writers don't speak Spanish. What's the comfort level like for you with some of those guys, and how excited are they to kind of be able to talk to somebody in their native language without an interpreter?
Yeah. I think it's really exciting. I appreciate when they give you that time, when they give you that opportunity to talk to them, because I feel like it's a great opportunity for our listeners to hear directly from the players, and that's exactly what they want to do. They want to listen from the players, how they're feeling, and I always try to make sure that to connect that with the fans, and always ask them, tell them, to give any specific shout out they have for fans, and they're always very thankful for all the fans that listen to the broadcast.
Yeah, and again, it's their personality in the native language always kind of comes through more than, say, than when they're with some of the English interviews. It's harder, or through an interpreter. It's just not the same as opposed to your native language. You know what I mean?
Correct. No, and I think that was really clear this past season. I got to interview Hector Neris a lot throughout the season, and just see his personality and his leadership. And there you go for someone a little bit younger like Javier Assad, and how he's been growing in the league. And I think it's been really great. And again, it's a huge responsibility that I take a lot of commitment to, and I try to always make sure that I try to bring what the fan wants to hear.
Now, this year, you guys went to Dodger Stadium, your first away broadcast. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is the first broadcast.
How exciting was that for you guys when you found out that you were going to go on the road? Did you get to go? Did you is it Air Ricketts? Are you on a plane with the Cubs, or did you guys take your own flight out there? What was that like?
We actually did get to charter out with the team after the Yankees series, and that was a surreal moment. Right after the game, you have an hour. You have to make sure before the game you drop off your luggage, and then the bus leaves after an hour after the game, straight to the airport. And I've never been escorted that way in my life, and it was amazing. It was an amazing 4-hour flight to Los Angeles, and to be able to call a baseball game, let alone to watch a baseball game, and to be able to call a baseball game in Dodger Stadium was something magical, and to be able to share it with my broadcast partners, I really couldn't ask for more.
And for those people that don't know, when the Cubs go on the away trip, they're going to the charter. They get police escorts on the bus, so they just fly through. So I love when I'm driving home and I just see the bus. I'm like, that's just absolutely amazing. And the other thing special about having that first broadcast in Los Angeles is the Dodgers really were groundbreaking when it came to Spanish broadcasts.
Correct. And they have, and we built a great relationship with their broadcasters, Jose Mota, the Señor Pepe Íñiguez. Fernando Valenzuela, may he rest in peace. And it's been very special because they've always traveled to Chicago, so we've always talked, we've always built that relationship. And now this year, for them to see us in Dodger Stadium, I think it was really groundbreaking. And it was something very positive, not only for us being Cubs broadcasters, but for Spanish speaking broadcasters in general.
And this is obviously a picture that I put up of Fernando Valenzuela. And what I love about this picture right here, the Dodgers, it was on the Dodgers Twitter site, Fernando Mania Forever is what it says in both English and Spanish. But you got that picture of Fernando looking to the heavens, how his eyeballs would roll up. You got, the hat tip right there. But what I also like is they have a picture of him as a broadcaster. And I was young enough to live through Fernando Mania. I didn't completely understand that. I was pretty young at the time. But I mean, that was the biggest deal back in the day. But he reminds me a lot of like Ron Santo, where I never saw Ron Santo play. I saw Fernando Valenzuela play a lot more than I saw Ron Santo. But to me, the legacy of the broadcaster sometimes is almost as equal as to the playing career with those guys.
For sure, of course. And in his situation, for him to be able to connect that sport, not only playing it, as you mentioned, but also as a broadcaster to his native people in Mexico and just all around the world, all these Spanish-speaking fans. I think it's been amazing. It was a complete career in every sense of the word, and just what he meant to the Hispanic community and specifically Los Angeles. And so that's why those broadcasts in that stadium mean that much, because it's just you could just feel the history in Dodger Stadium.
Now, you've been with the Cubs since 2018, and there's been some highs and there's been some lows. What are some of your favorite memories in the broadcast booth? Something that you as a young fan in 2003, if you could, you could go back in time and tell your young self in 2003, hey, you're going to witness this live at Wrigley Field and be able to call it.
For sure, the Christopher Moreno home run versus the White Sox, that one was really special just because of the rivalry. I'm a Chicago kid. I'm a Chicago boy. I grew up in Cicero, so living in the Southwest side, that was always that. There was a lot of Sox fans. And so being able to call that game was very special. The combined no-hitter this past season was also something that was very special. And just every opening day, it's just something that never really gets old. So every opening day is always just as special as well.
Yeah, and I'm really hoping that you guys get to really call a good playoff series. Just watching the playoffs. But as you sit here and you kind of watch, just the fan base growing as far as the Hispanic fan base, especially for the Cubs, but just in general, you got Juan Soto who's going to be in the World Series. I think the World Baseball Classic has been a huge, huge growth for the Latino fans right there. Do you see this really growing even more in the future?
I absolutely do. I think you've hit something really key, and that was the World Baseball Classic. And that in itself, south of the border, that really took a lot of passion, and that really took a lot of fans. When a lot of the newer fans within Mexico and back at home as well, after Mexico had that really good performance, you would see a lot of the jerseys, a lot of the hats, Puerto Rico as well, Venezuela. So I definitely agree that this is only going to grow. And I give a lot of credit to MLB as well, because they make it accessible to the fan via their app, and the amount of messages we get. We tallied a total of 11 different countries that listen to our broadcast, and that's not possible without the MLB app.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And like I said, you got people like my friend Danny Rocket who listens to you guys just to practice his Spanish. So you could fall in love with those broadcasts even if you don't speak Spanish. It's you can learn it, and it's fun and interesting. And not only that, if you're missing Miguel and Jorge and everybody, you guys don't get any time off here, because here's a picture of you and Miguel with the Blackhawks, with Tommy the Blackhawk right there. You're doing the Blackhawks games and the Bulls games, all for the Latino Media Network. I mean, how exciting, you said as a Chicago kid, when you think about the Bulls and the Blackhawks, I mean, you basically get to spend year round with Chicago sports teams.
Yeah, it's definitely a blessing. It's definitely a blessing. It's a grind. I won't deny that. It's definitely it's grind mentally, physically. But at the end of the day, you have to always look back and reflect and understand that you have this opportunity to be able to leave your mark on the Chicago scene, on the Chicago sports scene. And what better than in Spanish, and what better than in our native tongue. And it's crazy. It's great. I love hockey. I grew up within the Mighty Ducks, watching the Mighty Ducks, playing Sega Genesis and NHL 94. So my connection with hockey is also very special in its own way. And again, to be able to say that I could call those games in Spanish and try to bring that sport to my community, to my city, I think is something very special.
Now I got to ask you, when I think about a baseball broadcast, there's a certain cadence, there's a certain rhythm that kind of goes to it, that's kind of just laid back. It's that kind of thing where you sit there. It's no different. I don't want to say it's no different, but it's the thing that makes a good broadcast, in my opinion, is just kind of making you feel like you're at the game, talking to the broadcaster while you're watching the game. And it doesn't always have to be like nonstop. Sometimes you just chill and you tell stories and you tell funny things going on, little anecdotes, whatever. But to me, in hockey and basketball, it's always back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you really have to kind of have a different broadcast style, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I think my broadcast partner Miguel is a perfect example, because once you hear him call a hockey game, as opposed, as you said, to calling a baseball game, it's night and day with the action. And my duties next to either him or Elio are the same, in the sense that I'm trying to see something that they haven't seen. I'm trying to get a stat that they haven't mentioned. In hockey, is more of a line change, or who created the mistake, or who was the one that committed the error, something that he didn't catch. And in baseball is always the smaller details. How long was that home run, or what kind of pitches? That's little things that change in our broadcast. But nonetheless, we'll definitely try to have fun with it, especially in baseball. In baseball, we laugh a lot of anecdotes, as you said.
Yeah, it just kind of lends itself to it. And the other growth that you see is in social media. It's what allows the fans to connect to you guys. It's how I found you and Miguel, and everybody was like, "Oh, look at these guys on social media." Um, how important to you is it to kind of keep that social media updated and keep fans kind of like tuned into what's going on with you and your broadcasts?
It's very important. Again, I think that's the connection for us, straight to the fans. That's where they reach out to us when they're listening to the games, and telling for us to give them a shout out to a specific country, specific city, specific family that's listening to the broadcast. So it's very important, and I think that goes hand in hand with the responsibility as well of trying to get the interviews and trying to put them on social media, or just a little update of how our day is going or what we got going on for the rest of the day.
Well, Jorge, I appreciate you jumping on and letting us know a little bit about your background. I think our listeners are going to find it really interesting. Where can they go to find you on the socials, and where can they go to listen to your calls of both the Bulls and Blackhawks?
Yeah, I appreciate the invite as always, Crawly. And they can find me on Twitter or X as the Deportes Moreno, and on Facebook as Jorge J. Moreno, George J. Moreno. And you can listen to our broadcast in the city of Chicago on 1200 AM, WRTO. Baseball, the Cubs of broadcast, you can listen to them on the marquee on the SAP option, as well as the MLB app. And every time you're at the United Center, we're behind section 316. And anytime we're at Wrigley, you could always find us at the press box. We're more than happy to say hi and talk a little bit about Cubs baseball.
Absolutely love it, Jorge. You take care, and I look forward to hearing your broadcast soon.
I appreciate that, Carly. You take care.
This is season 3, episode 85. The 2024 World Series Spectacular is here. Feel free to leave us a 5-star review. Also, feel free to watch us on the 670 The Score YouTube page. All right, Crawly, here we go. Friday night in LA, Yankees at the Dodgers.
Yes, sir. The 2024 postseason, a lot of memorable moments. We're down to the final 2. A marquee matchup, pun intended. Tons of interesting facts that I think our listeners will enjoy. But Dustin, I really want to know from you, like, as someone that works in the biz, that this is your career, what is it like for you to see this kind of matchup between two powerhouses?
Well, it's a dream matchup for us, right? Everybody's got an opinion on these teams. Stars galore. I think even in the Midwest, I think people that listen to The Score are going to be interested in this one.
Yeah, for me as a baseball fan, I mean, it's I see the jokes, and I think our buddy Joe Obvious at Obvious Shirt said, "I don't want either team to win, or I want both teams to lose." I think the shirt said, but it's interesting. It's fascinating TV. You're gonna want to watch this for us. So when we take a look, as far as the road to kind of get here, I thought that we talked about the postseason, to me, just being one of the most interesting postseasons we've had in a while here. When we talked about the wild card, Detroit swept Houston, KC swept Baltimore, which was a really big shock. The Padres swept the Braves. The only one not to go to sweep was that New York Mets over the Brewers, and my Wisconsin friends are still complaining about that pitch from Devin Williams to the polar bear. Still upset about that.
Yep.
But I think would we agree that Mets Brewers was the best of the, or would you like the Dodgers versus? I think, yeah.
Dodgers Padres was the best.
You think the Dodgers Padres were the best series?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was in the Dodgers took that one 3-2. A lot of heat in that one. The Mets beat the Phillies 3-1 in an upset on that one. Detroit loses to Cleveland. That was a phenomenal one too. Both of those series were great. I think New York, KC, meh, okay.
Boring. I mean, the Yankees basically walked to the World Series. Had a very easy path.
Hey, that's what you get for getting the 1 seed, right? That should be ultimately the goal. And then I thought that the Yankees Cleveland was better than the Dodgers Mets series, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree.
So, Dustin, you, again, in media here, and you talk about all the sports. I'm more baseball centric. I found this interesting when I found this. For each professional sports league, MLB, NBA, NHL, NFL, which is the most common championship round matchup? So MLB, I think you know what it is.
Dodgers Yankees.
What do you got for me as far as basketball, NBA?
Boston and the Lakers.
You are
Celtics,
correct.
Lakers. Yep.
And what about for the NFL? I know you're not David Hall, but NHL?
Ooh, NHL. Let me think. That's tough. I'm not even going to waste anybody's time. I have no idea.
And what about for NFL?
Steelers, Cowboys.
So Yankees, Dodgers, 12. Celtics, Lakers, 12. Red Wings and Maple Leafs, Canadians and Bruins are tied at 7. Giants, Bears, 6. That's pretty.
Giants, Bears, 6.
Yes,
that must have been though. Like that's
Super Bowl.
pre-Super Bowl. You're right.
Yes,
Okay, I'm thinking Super Bowl matchups.
It blew my mind when I kind of was looking at that.
That is good trivia.
Yes, sir. And so when we look here, there were 37 World Series before the Dodgers and Yankees first met. They met in 11 of the next 41, and then it took another 41 years before they met again in the 120th World Series. Yankees clearly got the advantage. The Dodgers have only won 3 times in those 11 meetings. But Dustin, how nuts is it? In the 50s, they met 4 times. And then from 77, 78, and 81, they met. So 3 times in a span of like 5 years.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, nothing from 81 now. And then I just think, Fernando Valenzuela passing away right before.
Part of that 81 and part of that, a big part of that 81 series.
Right. So just unbelievable. Here's a couple facts that come from the great Sarah Langs. I'm sure people that follow this show follow her on Twitter. But with Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Judge, and Stanton, there are 5 players who won MVPs in their careers who are going to take the field when the World Series starts. That would be the most MVPs to play in a World Series. So Ohtani, Betts, Freeman, Judge, and Stanton, right? Now, not only that, Dustin, we can pretty much assume who the MVPs are going to be for AL/NL, correct?
Yes.
Ohtani and Judge?
Yes.
So
I think that is game, set, match.
So if they get it, this would be the first time since 2012, and that's the only time in the wild card era that 2 MVPs would have faced off. The last time would have been Miguel Cabrera and Buster Posey, Detroit versus San Fran. So that's kind of another nutty stat right there. Now, if Judge or Ohtani win the World Series MVP as well, there have been 5 players to win the World Series MVP in addition to the regular season MVP in the same year. Hasn't happened since Mike Schmidt, 1980, legendary Cubs killer. Now, Dustin, with all this talent on the field, it's hard not to wonder how many future Hall of Famers we're going to be watching. You could say Soto, right? Juan Soto, Hall of Famer?
Yes.
Judge, Stanton. What about Garrett Cole?
I'd have to really look. Doesn't roll off the lips as a Hall of Famer. I mean, probably.
Ohtani?
If he's not, something's going to go really wrong.
Betts?
Probably.
Freddie Freeman?
Nah.
Well, they say that at least 7 players appear to have strong Hall of Fame tracks. Doesn't count Kershaw, who's on the roster, but who's not going to be in the World Series. The last time a World Series had 7 or more Hall of Famers, 1996. That was the Yankees versus the Braves. Get this lineup: Tom Glavine, Chipper Jones, Greg Maddux, Fred McGriff, John Smoltz, Wade Boggs, Derek Jeter, Tim Raines, Mariano Rivera.
It's pretty good. Pretty solid.
Dustin, I have to ask, I know you're a big newspaper guy like I was growing up. Do you know about the ex-Cub factor?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
October 15th.
Very aware.
October 15th, 1981. Ron Burler was a freelance journalist. He wrote it in Boston, actually, but he grew up a Cub fan. It was later popularized by Mike Royko, but it was Burler who first brought it up. He argued that it's utterly impossible for a team with 3 or more ex-Cubs to win the World Series. So he based that on going post-1945. How many Dodgers were at one time Chicago Cubs?
Well, it says 0 here.
You're looking. All righty. So the Yankees have 6 potential guys that are on their roster, that are on their 40-man roster.
And at one point,
yep.
Cubs.
DJ LeMahieu, Scott Efros, Gleyber Torres, Marcus Stroman, Mark Leiter Jr., and Anthony Rizzo. So we can assume, LeMahieu and Efros are not going to be on it. The question is, who of Gleyber Torres, Marcus Stroman, Mark Leiter, Anthony Rizzo? Do you think the Yankees will have 3 Cubs?
Yes. Right.
Okay.
I mean, Torres and Rizzo are slam dunks, right?
Okay.
And Leiter Jr. probably.
Leiter Jr. was not on the ALDS or ALCS until an injury. So,
right.
And you'd have to assume at least Stroman would get in, right? I'd rather have Stroman than Leiter.
Yeah, well, I don't know. But I mean, I don't know if Stroman's willing to come out of the bullpen.
Now, I heard you guys talking about this on The Score. Do you want to see Anthony Rizzo win a World Series with the Yankees?
Sure. Why not? Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I've been struggling with this one.
Really?
Yeah, I literally, that last image I have of Rizzo with his arms in the air, I have an autographed photo of it. It's one of my prized possessions. That instant moment right there just means the world to me. And sometimes, like, I feel like that if he wins another one, am I going to see another moment where Rizzo has his hands in the air, but in a Yankee uniform? And do I want to see that?
I gotcha. That's a good. I mean, listen, you make a solid argument. I see where you're going with it, but I'm not going to root against him. I'm not going to root against him.
I love Rizzo, everything he's done for this franchise. It's not his fault he's with the Yankees, and the stuff he's done for Lurie's Children's Hospital. It would be hard for me. That's all I'm saying. I'm being selfish here. Just so our fans, our listeners know, Game 1 and Game 2, Friday and Saturday on Fox, 7 p.m. Dustin, you're not going to have to go searching for it. Nope. And then it goes to, then we go to New York, and then that's 3 games at New York, and then finishing up, if needed, Game 6 and 7. But those games in New York, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then, if necessary, back in LA, Game 6 and 7. So, Dustin, we got some predictions. I'll let you go first on this one. How many games will the World Series be?
6.
I want to go with 7. I'm going to go Game 7. Who do you believe? I will go with this one first. Who's going to hit the most home runs? I'm going to go Giancarlo Stanton.
That's a really good pick. I'll just be different. I'll say Mookie Betts.
You love your Mookie Betts. All right. You get to go first this time. Who will win the World Series?
Dodgers.
Because of the ex-Cub factor?
It's part of it now. And I think the Fernando Valenzuela part of it.
Oh, all right. I'm going to say, I kind of believe that the Yankees pitching will help them propel them to win the World Series. And World Series MVP, Dustin.
Mookie Betts.
I'm going to go Juan Soto.
All right, very good. Chalkity, chalk, 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 but that's okay.
Yep.
He's got to be one of the favorites.
Yes, sir. And it's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to see this World Series.
All right, Crawly, that's a wrap. Don't forget to listen, download, subscribe. Give us a 5-star review. We'll be back early with you guys next week to recap the first couple games of the Fall Classic.
And hey, I'm still going to be cheering for Rizzo because he was with the North Siders. As always, go Cubs! Hey guys, it's Crawly. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date with our latest episodes. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Go Cubs!